Yeah, this episode's not going to suck like the last 100 or so. This one's going to rock with the nice guys on business.
In a selling situation, the customer will actually do things that are not in their best interest. Like, well, just tell me the price, right? And I'll go, well, no, I'm not going to tell you the price. Because it's not in your best interest to know the price until we have a conversation around what are you trying to do. And then we try and figure out what's the value of that. So I agree. I think, in fact, I refer to it in my book as dancing.
Oh, nice.
You come up to a prospect, you present a potential opportunity, right, as yourself, and say, would you like to take some time to explore this? And if they say, sure, then you're dancing, selling.
Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers only. And the nice guys on business. Running a business is hard. Being a business leader is even harder. The nice guys bring in top industry pros to help your business prosper in a tough world. Get real advice from real people to get you real results today. Now it's time for the nice guys on business. Here's your hosts, Doug Sandler and Strickland Bonner.
Nice guy community. So, one of my favorite topics in business is selling. Because in business, nothing, and again, nothing happens until you sell something. And it's not what you sell, it's how you sell. How you sell will depend on your market and who you are selling to. Well, today's guest is Greg Nutter. He is the founder of Soloquent, a company that helps business owners and senior sales executives solve revenue growth problems in a variety of sales models. He's also the author of a best-selling book. We're going to talk about the book today, P3 Selling. Going back to the 80s, his experience is amazing. Greg has contributed to the growth of over 1,000 sales pros worldwide. Let's close some deals and talk selling with today's guest. Welcome, Greg, to the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
Thanks, Doug. Great to be here.
Hey, happy to have you here. And I want to talk about that one thing that I said in the intro, and maybe your perspective. Maybe this is asking a guy that really has all of his eggs in the selling basket. Can you actually do anything in a company until you sell something?
Nope.
It's hard.
Nobody gets paid.
Right.
Bills aren't paid. Nothing happens. And, particularly, I think I may have mentioned to you at some point that work with a lot of small companies, and starting sales, getting sales is the most important thing they could be doing, for sure.
It's interesting. You could put a bad sales guy and give him a great product, and the company will do nothing. You can take a great sales guy and give him, pardon my expression, jack shit as a product, and they will still end up making a 7-figure income. So can we talk about that for a second? How important, again, I'm asking a loaded question to a guy that's got his entire career in selling. What process do you need to get started with in order to just understand that you really can't go anywhere until you understand the process of selling when it comes to startups or entrepreneurship or any of that? Maybe just share a little bit of that for me, if you would.
Maybe I'll step back a bit. I have a great question, but let me step back a bit so I can kind of preface it a bit and then move into it. There's two kinds of selling that we are experienced on a day-to-day basis. One is, the business to consumer selling, B2C selling. We call it transactional sale, right? The simple sale. And then there's the B2B selling, which is the complex or the solution consultative selling sale. The problem is that we are very familiar with the B2B sale. We see it every day when we go to buy anything. Electronics, a car.
B2C.
B2C,
yeah,
right.
Sorry. Okay, just making sure we got that.
Yeah, and because we're so familiar with that, we naturally think that it works in B2B. And it does, I would say, about 20% of the time. The problem is if that's the way you're selling, you lose the other 80% of the deals, right? So you get some, you get lucky, you get a big deal, and you think you're doing the right thing, and you're not. Because the traditional business to consumer selling involves what we call the two-step. You give information, you ask for the order, or the next step. You give them for more information, you ask for the order, right? That doesn't work in B2B. And so if people try to make that work, they have either mediocre results or they flame out. It's just not successful because a B2B sale is much more what we call a complex sale with lots of different people, lots of different steps in the process, and the linkage between your product and the product features and the benefits of it are not always that obvious.
I always think about it in terms of the B2C, the business to consumer sale is like you said earlier, a transaction, and the B2B sale is much more of a relationship. If that's the case, is there a way to better build the relationship with your potential client using a system or using a process as opposed to just, hey, I know that I have a potential customer here because they have a need and they're walking into my store or they're giving me a call and I know that they need what I have. It's not that simple when it comes to the B2B side of things.
Right. In fact, I call the B2C, business to consumer selling, clerking. It's like, we've got a sale on this week. Would you like me to wrap that up for you? Just giving information, asking for the order. So in the kind of first chapter of my book, I asked the question, what's selling? Define selling. And how is it B2B selling different than clerking? And, I like to relate that. I have this one sales rep, when I asked that question, he said, it's getting people to buy my stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the output, but it's the what do you do? And what I find a good way to look at it is it's creating awareness. It's asking questions so that people go, I hadn't thought of that. That's a really good perspective. That problem is probably bigger than I originally thought. So it's creating this awareness, or even what I like to call light bulb moments. And that process creates value for the client so that you're not just wrestling over a product, you're now focusing on solving a problem. And that's the key difference in B2B selling.
I want to get a little deeper into the process in just a couple of moments, but I want everybody, and I want to set you up properly so people know that they're listening to, certainly they've heard me for the last 7 years of doing this podcast. And sometimes I bring on somebody that might be newer in the industry, and sometimes I bring on the well-experienced, seasoned person. You definitely qualify from the information that I have gotten and the research that I've done, more on the extremely well-seasoned, level of experience. Can you maybe share a little of your experience so those in the community can feel confident in what we're about to talk about as we take a deeper dive after you share it?
Sure, happy to. As you mentioned, I've been in sales management, sales consulting for over 30 years now. So started when I was 12, of course, is the old joke. My first job was telephone sales and a straight commission. You don't sell, you don't eat, right? You don't pay the rent that much. So it was very much you had to figure it out, and no one gave you any training. It was, here's a phone book, there's a phone. Let us know when you got an order, right? So I was fortunate that I did that actually for 7 or 8 years and did fairly well, but had to figure it out myself. From there, I went on to work for a company called Xerox, where I sold in their computer technology area, their hardware and software. Back in the day, Xerox was one of the two most famous organizations for providing sales training. Things like spin selling and other great methodologies. I went from there as a sales rep to a sales trainer to a sales manager to a branch manager, all focused on driving sales and coaching salespeople in sales. After that, I worked for a lot of smaller companies, from startups to certainly companies in the $10 to $50 million range. And some startups, and then went out on my own back in 2005, where I worked with a wide range of companies, some very big companies, but also some startups, helping them build their sales teams.
So I've had a chance over the last 6 or 7 years to interview some of the sales greats, Tom Ziglar, Zig Ziglar's son, and Jeffrey Gitomer, of course, the self-proclaimed king of sales, some Gary Vaynerchuk, some real heavy hitters. And I found that we have talked about ad nauseum, not just with these guys, but with many of the pros that are in the world, the things that the people are doing wrong when it comes to creating a system and a process. I want to spend just a moment talking about some of the things that the companies are doing right when they approach you, and then maybe dissect a couple of the things that they're doing wrong so that we can share with people why picking up a copy of your book might be a good first start if they really want to erase some of the or maybe improve some of the numbers that the percentages that they have when it comes to conversion of prospects to customers. So maybe share when somebody comes to you what they are doing right, and then we can talk about dissecting some of the other things.
A lot of times people are doing a great job of looking at the market, figuring out who's our ideal customer, right? Who has the need. So they're segmenting the market right. They're producing, for the most part, I think, good product messaging. So, when they're in early stages, they're getting some traction and some resonance with those customers. So, and a lot of the companies I've started working with, their products are actually pretty good. They've listened to customers. They've got good feedback on what's working and what's not, and they've been very responsive to tune that product so that it fits those customers' needs very, very well. So I think on the product side, they're doing a great job.
So I find that people really invest a lot of dollars in marketing and very little amount of money in the selling process itself. And once the phone rings, they just have somebody that's just puking product, unfortunately. So can you maybe explain or share some of the early stages of what needs to be shared with a prospect when you have them on the other end of the phone? And again, I think what ends up happening is, in today's age, we're meeting many of our potential clients, especially our early stage startups or entrepreneurs that are building their business as a side hustle, or maybe doing it as a full-time gig in this remote world. They're doing it just like we are doing it right now, eyeball to eyeball. Now, those of you listening to the podcast aren't seeing, but Greg and I are actually looking at each other. And I find that a lot of the businesses that I'm dealing with, we're no longer having phone calls. We're now all doing Zoom calls. So we're getting almost the same vibe as we were if we were meeting them at a coffee shop or heading to their office. So can you share some of the early stages of the relationship that maybe we should be going through if we're not doing that with a potential customer on the other end?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head there, Doug. That too often sales reps, sellers are focused on their product or their company. We all love to think we've got the best product and the best company. We love to brag about it. But without the context of a problem or an opportunity that a customer wants to address, nobody cares, right? Makes no difference about how good your product or even how much does it cost. So the starting point in any conversation is the search for a problem or an opportunity that your product offering can address. And there's three parts to that. One is, what problems do they have? How important are they? How urgent are they? And if possible, to put a number on it. What's the impact? Ideally financially, if you don't fix that, how does that really impact the organization? And until you've got a feel for that, to me, it makes no sense in saying, well, let me tell you about my product, right? And so that's the first P. I talk about my book, P3 Selling. The first P is problem. It's, what problems do they have? How important, urgent are they? Who has them? And putting a number on it. And
it's really
the starting point.
As you say that, as you begin to talk about the P number one, the problem. Whenever I start this, I call it the sales dance, for lack of a better word. Let's just call it the sales dance for a sec. I think that was probably one of the terms that my dad had not coined necessarily, but had definitely shared with me at the dining room table many, many times. When we first start that sales dance, it's almost like, somebody will be a potential purchaser of my product. They're in the prospect stage and they'll say, hey, tell me a little bit about what you do. And I gently hold them back for a second. And before I puke, and I even say it, before I puke a bunch of product and service at you, can I ask you just a couple of questions? Maybe, how did we get here?
Absolutely.
I love that, because now what I'm doing is, as we know, and I'm sure you have dealt with this many times, the person asking the questions is really the one in complete control of the conversation.
Right.
If I can guide the conversation by asking my prospect across the table or the Zoom call for me, hey, before I puke product, let me ask you a couple of questions that will really help me steer the part of the conversation that I think will benefit you the most, rather than me just telling you about everything that my company offers, because I don't think you want to spend 6 hours on the phone with me right now.
Right.
So Is that just something that I'm picking up along the way, or is that a good process to like, where would you start with a potential customer that is just inquiring, or you're reaching out to them to try to figure out if they have some level of interest in what you got?
Yeah, I think the way you framed it, Doug, is exactly right. Everybody, a customer, we always say the customer is right, but sometimes in a selling situation, the customer will actually do things that are not in their best interest. Like, well, just tell me the price, right? And I'll go, well, no, I'm not going to tell you the price, because it's not in your best interest to know the price until we have a conversation around what are you trying to do, and then we try and figure out what's the value of that. So I agree. I think, in fact, I refer to it in my book as dancing.
Oh, nice.
you come up to a prospect, you present a potential opportunity, right, as yourself, and say, would you like to take some time to explore this? And if they say sure, then you're dancing, selling, right? And so there's an exploration around problem, then there's an exploration around people, and then there's an exploration around process, the buying decision process. If you ask yourself, what do sellers do? The behaviors, there's really three key behaviors. We ask questions to understand. We ask questions to influence. And then the third one is we message back based on our understanding and based on the work that are influencing to align to people's perceptions. And you do those three things as it relates to problems, as it relates to people, as it relates to buying processes.
How do you get someone to understand the level of importance that there is in the actual follow-up? I find that, even what's the expression? The amateur salesperson, even a blind squirrel finds an acorn now and then. They will make a sale through not doing any follow-up. I have found that my life is filled with follow-up, and sometimes, and I hate this expression, but it's even involved in chasing someone that said to me at one point, I have an extreme interest. It's a huge priority for me, and it's cost me X amount of dollars or X amount of time. I want to get rid of this problem. How do you stop people from salespeople from chasing? What do you tell them when they say, I'm chasing people all day long?
Well, there's two parts to what you described there. The first is getting a sales rep to follow up, but the other one is why don't customers return your calls, right? Like you said, hey, I've got this huge problem. Can you call me in 2 weeks? And you call them in 2 weeks and they just ghost you, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that happens because, well, two reasons. One is they may have had a problem that you found, but you didn't take it to the next step to how important is that? How urgent is that? And by asking certain questions, you get people to say, you know what, it is pretty urgent. I need to do something about it this week. Now, if you know that, you can reach out to that prospect and say, remember, you told me that if this didn't get fixed by the end of the year, you could lose your job over this, right? So we really need to get on this. Instead, if you look at the typical follow-up that you get from a sales rep, it sounds like this. Hey, Doug, just wanted to follow up to see if you could tell me what you thought about my proposal. Could you just follow up to see if you had any more questions for me? So it's all about the seller. And if you want someone to reach out to return your call, it has to be about the buyer, right? And then the other thing is that sometimes deals go away, right? There are other priorities. There are change my mind, not that important. And a sales rep has only got so many hours in a day, and they need to decide, is someone still dancing with me, or have they moved on to dance with someone else, maybe with a totally different product or need? And after a certain amount of time, you need to say, hey, I love you, but I need to move on too.
Yeah. There's got to be some level of self-respect in that process. And I can't tell you how many people I've taken off of my list that at one point this was the top priority in their on their initiatives, and yet they still ghosted me. But salespeople, we have to have a little bit thicker skin, and I would say the normal business person that's out there. I'm curious, how much, if any, of your book involves the prospecting side versus the selling side? Because I find that new salespeople, new entrepreneurs, new startups, people that are in the early phases of their entrepreneurial journey are really dealing a lot with prospecting. And hats off to those that are out there doing that. That is in the trenches. And you guys are all working really hard. Mad props to you for doing that. But how quickly can I expect someone to get out of prospecting and into selling a little bit faster? Or are there any tricks to getting out of prospecting and more into selling?
Well, prospecting, as you said, that Doug, is a key success factor for most reps, right? There's only so many leads that are going to fall in your lap, and a certain amount of it you got to dig out. So I do have a section, in fact, in the end of the book, we have a playbook section where we talk about 4 key processes: prospecting, call management, deal management, and pipeline management.
Mm-hmm.
So under prospecting, and those processes we use to bring together all the strategies in the book, the strategies around people, problems, and processes. So in prospecting, I use some statistics around how many times you should expect to reach out to somebody before you're going to get an answer. And it's like 8 touch points.
Yeah.
While the average rep reaches out twice. So that's why they figure it doesn't work. The other part of it is it's the how. There's 3 key success factors to prospecting: what I call the message, the delivery of that message, and the cadence. So the messaging needs to be all about problems and opportunities, not about product. Every time I see, prospecting emails or call scripts, they're all about, hey, we're the best in this business. Our product is renowned. It's on Gartner's Magic Quadrant, right? You need to be talking to us, instead of, hey, understand people like, or organizations like yours typically have these kinds of problems. And if you are facing them, love to share how other organizations have addressed it, right? And as simple as that. One last thing about prospecting is that there's 2 kinds of prospecting. There's the big marketing machine,
Mm-hmm.
where we try and get people to come to our websites and download our ebooks, listen to our podcasts. And then there's a sales rep picking up the phone. The sales rep picking up the phone works when you have a very qualified contact, in that this person does this kind of activity, and you have a very targeted message. If you're broad brush calling anybody with a very generic message,
Mm-hmm.
you do that with marketing, with websites and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't work in sales rep prospecting.
In your opinion, and again, I want to give you a chance to promote the book and talk a little bit more about it. But I'm really curious, before we go there. In your opinion, is there a right number when it comes to percentages for your budget that you should be spending or investing in selling, sales management, sales process, sales operations when it comes to your organization?
That's highly dependent on your product, right? On your market. So, strategies are very similar across markets, but things like, how do you go about prospecting? The culture of how you engage in arm-to-arm combat is very, very, very different. Spending has to do with again, how complex is a sale? How long is that sales cycle? How much business acumen do you need of your sales reps? If it's a very simple sale where it's just, here, let me tell you about the product, then you could probably get some, $40,000, $50,000, SDRs, sales reps just generating simple calls. If it's a long sales cycle, 6 months, 4 months, 6 months, a year and a half, you need very senior people who can carry, that level of a relationship and credibility over that length of time. So your costs are going to be much, much higher. The challenge you run into, and I'm finding this with a current client, is that when you have a mix match of product complexity and low price, then you have a problem because you need a lot of deal flow to pay for the complexity, the business acumen of the sales reps. And that's hard. And a lot of startups are going to have that problem, right? Where they particularly have to have a brand new emerging product. They're going to need some decent, well-skilled reps. But the price point may be too low to carry $150,000 a year rep.
So if I were to put a brand new startup in your lap and say, okay, we've got an hour, we've got an hour to train these guys just on the basics, where do you even start with somebody that is about to start selling their first product or service to a business that's out there looking for what they have?
Understand the problems. I would say it's more important. A sales rep can get a long way down a sales cycle if they just talk about problems that their products can solve, the impact that it has on that organization, the people who generally have those problems, and the process that they go through to making those buying decisions.
Yeah.
You can always bring in every company, startup or large, have got lots of people who really know the product, right? In fact, when I was at Xerox, we were in a boardroom once where we were talking about a chart, where we would graph tenure versus business acumen, right? So on the y-axis was business acumen, right? So very high, very low. On the x-axis was years with the company. And you ask yourself, what do you think that graph looks like? What it looks like is it starts at the top very high and it rapidly slopes down to the bottom, which means the longer you're with that company, the lower business acumen you have. And you say, Greg, why would that happen? Because if you look at most companies and what they train on, product. We have this new product. We have these new features. We have this new pricing. This is what the analysts say about our product, right? And so business acumen is kind of stripped out of sellers. And they think that that's what they talk about. And so that's what they do. And that is the least effective way of actually influencing people and differentiating about the value you can bring.
I know as a business owner yourself, you've gone from the one-to-one model, and as an author going to the one-to-many model with trying to get your message broad brush stroke out to the masses. What was the hope when you wrote the book, and where are you with it right now?
Great question. So I, like a lot of people who are in consulting, you always threaten, well, one day I'm going to write a book on this, right? And a couple of years ago, a company brought me in. They lost a sales director, and they said, Greg, can you just manage the team for a little while until we get somebody else in place? And I was going through one-on-ones with these sales reps. And some of these people were in their late 30s and their 40s. And I was like, oh my God, these people have been selling a long time and they're making the same mistakes, right? And some of them had taken some really good sales training, really good programs. I'm wondering, like, what is it that people forget? And so I thought there needs to be a simpler way that you could just tell them, you know what? Don't look at all these fancy processes and this funny jargon, and focus on three things. What problems can you address? If people have those problems, and how do they impact the decision? And what's the buying decision process? Where are you in that process? And what can you do best to move it along? And if you just focus on those three, always ask yourself, what problems are we trying to fix? Where are we? Which people have it? And where are we in the process? To me, you get a lot of insights as to, oh, I should be doing this or I shouldn't be doing that, right? And that was kind of the epiphany, and I decided, hey, I'm going to put down these 3 simple concepts. What I discovered, in fact, the person who I originally wrote the books was, someone just out of school, working for a small company that didn't do any sales training, said, here's your product, go out and sell, like where I started. And as I, started thinking about it, I also thought about these people who were in their 30s and 40s and 50s and still selling, and who had lost it somewhere along the way. And they were like a deer in the headlights, and they were, I need to figure this out, or I'm going to get fired and, be, serving fast food, right? And then as I finally came to close to publishing the book, I realized it's a great framework for either an owner or a sales manager, sales leader, on how to manage his team. These are the things we need to do. These are the processes we need to have, because it's not just selling processes that make a company successful. And this is the real epiphany. It's sales management processes as well, right? Without sales management processes, and I've often said to probably a lot of disapproving sales managers, is that sales managers are the greatest single weakness when it comes to rolling out a sales program. They can make it successful by coaching to it, supporting it, driving it, or they can doom it if they don't sign up, right? And so sales processes, sales management processes are the 2 keys to success.
Well, I'm excited to get some feedback from my community. The book is called P3 Selling. Greg is the author of the book. He's been sharing a whole bunch of great stuff today. Thank you so much. He is a sponsor of the show as well, and I'm excited to be able to endorse the book. Just through the limited amount of contact that I've had with it, is definitely an exceptional read. I'm excited to dig in a little bit deeper with it as well. And Greg, what's the best way for somebody to get a hold of the book if they wanted to do that?
You can get the book on Amazon or on Kindle, or on Barnes and Noble, or any bookstore, iTunes, pretty well any online bookstore can get it.
All right, so we'll make sure we put a link in the show notes for p3selling.com. We'll get you right there, and then you can just click on the links there and make it a thing. I know that you are doing some other opportunities with your selling. It seems like you're putting a lot of the eggs in the basket of the book being promoted and the book being the thing that you're really doing. Is this something that is a calling card for a bigger package of something that you think that you want to provide, or do you think the book is where you're heading with this? I mean, again, Jeffrey Gitomer, he sold millions of books. Gary Vee sold millions of books also. It certainly is a great opportunity. But what's your thought? What's your hope for the book?
Yeah, I think the book is primarily around sales process, but a lot of organizations need help. They know that if they don't just hand out books to their sellers or all read it and become experts on it, right? Some of your high performers can and will, but there aren't a lot of high performers, sales reps in the world that we can all, find one. So I've started working with companies to help deploy those processes on how to coach their sales management or put processes in place to use the P3 selling concepts to build a scalable selling machine within their organization. So adding some services around the best practices in the book.
Yeah, and it's a great lead in. When I wrote a book called Nice Guys Finish First, and this was back in 2014, and it was a great opportunity for me to get into a lot of organizations that I really could help on a greater level that I could not help just by making a prospecting call into their organization. So sometimes the book is a great calling card to get there, and sometimes the book, as many authors can share, is the end result is selling hundreds of thousands of books. Either way that you take it, I wish you a ton of success, and thanks for sharing your expertise on the show today.
Thanks, Doug. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Nice Guy community, never underestimate the power of nice. Again, special thanks to our guest. All of his information will be right there in the show notes. Just click the link in the show notes to get access to his book, his website, and all information that he's got. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Fill up your week with the Nice Guys. The Nice Guys on Business are publishing 5 episodes a week. My master plan is working.